commissioner. He also does a fair amount of lead work. I appreciate that. And he's volunteered to present the LEED's plastics presentation. The LEED creates a whole series of presentations. Barbara, are you in charge of all that?
No.
No, okay. She's involved with it.
I'm in
The
charge of
idea
disseminating.
is these presentations are available for LEED members to take to the community. So we are going to be critics tonight about what we like and don't like. Is there something we feel like should be changed, must be changed? We want to capture that. Maybe it's perfect the way it is. We don't know. But Todd's going to share with us what there is. Because when you make a presentation as a league member to the community, you are presenting, I'll call it the party line. Really, you're not in the role of sharing your personal viewpoint on something. You're sharing the league's viewpoint. So we want to have to be true to the message that's we're presenting. So, okay, Todd, it's yours.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you all for being here. So, as you know, this wasn't a speech that I wrote, so it's probably going to be a lot better than the ones that I write. So, anyway, I was going to talk a little bit about my background a little bit, and as you know, I'm a retired aerospace engineer, but I had this very cool job for Panasonic Avionics, and any of you that fly on airplanes and use the little seat back TVs, those are the systems that we designed. So when I first started working there, I had a 6-month contract as a consultant, and I ended up staying there 15 years. So for the first 7 years, I managed this group, and we made these little mechanisms that flip monitors out from seats, right? Well, when I got there, they were very heavy and cumbersome, and there were maintenance nightmares that were constantly having to be adjusted and so forth. And they weren't profitable for the company. So when I was called in, they asked me to fix that whole group and the system. So I had a few guys working for me. And one of the first things we did is figure out how to make the things lighter. So to fly an airplane, it costs about $1,200 a year in fuel to fly 1 pound on an airplane. So that was a big motivation for me personally, being an environmental strategist, to get the weight down. So we got so good at it that we were turning a 6-pound mechanism into a 2-pound mechanism. And over the course of the 15 years, we saved millions of gallons of jet fuel by doing that. So one of the other things we did, the EU, we had a lot of customers in the European Union, and they gave us an advance notice that they were going to mandate that we comply with what's called the Reduction of Hazardous Substances Act. And my guys and I figured out 3 years ahead of time how to do that, and we eliminated all the hazardous materials of hexavalent chromium, cadmium plating, all that stuff. And then the third thing we did is we used only recyclable materials. So this subject that I'm going to talk about tonight is near and dear, and I do have some background in that. And a lot of those designs that we came up with over that 7 years are still flying, but I'm more proud of the fact that a lot of them are now recycled too. So anyway, plastics are a big part of our lives, and there's no way we're going to get rid of them. We use them in our cars and our food preps, but these are some of the things we're going to cover tonight. Where plastics come from, their hazards, the 4 R's of plastic, plastic recycling numbers, and bioplastics. So where do they come from? So all 3 of these are sources, and one of the first plastics that went into widespread use, believe it or not, was rubber from rubber trees. It's technically a plastic. So synthetic plastics are what we mostly use, and they're derived from fossil fuel products like coal and oil and natural gas, and that's the majority of what we see now. And then there's another class called bioplastics that come from vegetation. So 4% of all oil that's pulled out of the ground goes into plastic manufacturing, and you can see all these different things. We talked about septic systems and plumbing earlier, and here you go. Almost all piping now for both freshwater and wastewater is PVC or ABS. They're in our cars, everywhere. Our homes, furniture's made out of it, TVs, microwaves, stereos, sporting equipment, surfboards,
Car.
football pads, and then our health, syringes are made out of plastic, the sterile plastics, yeah, all kinds of stuff. Preemie incubators are made out of plastics even. So mostly what we use though is for food products, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So our goals from a league standpoint, and all of you are educators, that's why I'm a member of the league, because I believe it's important to teach by example, so that's the point of this whole lecture tonight. So we're going to talk about the plastics problem, how we minimize the use, and how we can reduce their harmful effects. So every year, that much plastic goes into our oceans worldwide. And to put that into perspective, one of the big heaps that you see at the landfill, that's about 14 million tons of stuff, and that goes into the oceans every year. So plastics are very harmful to marine life, and here's two examples. This poor guy got wrapped in a six-pack wrapper, and that turtle there ingested a plastic straw thinking it was food. And birds are very susceptible to plastics. This is an autopsy of an albatross, and those are all plastic bottle caps that killed it.
That's a baby too.
So this poor whale here, this is a pilot whale, and it had 80 bags that weighed 17 pounds in its stomach, and that was what proved fatal for it. It was a pilot whale in Thailand.
Oh, hold on just a sec. Those are plastic bags?
Yeah, they're all plastic bags, 80 of them
And you said Thailand?
in Thailand, yeah.
So this is our recycling.
Could be.
Very cruel way.
Laugh
yeah, it
there,
is.
right?
Maybe.
So, in addition to the temperature of the ocean heating up, one of the big factors in reef destruction with plastic. So when thin films wrap plastic, it basically kills the coral, and all the animals that survive from eating coral and using it as shelter also perish. So we have these giant floating barges of floating plastics. This is actually a small one here. And you see these especially in tidal estuaries in third world countries a lot of the times. And microplastics are the result of that floating and wave action. They break down to the point where you can't even see these things. So every single one of us in this room has microplastics in the tissues of your body. And unfortunately, it's inundated all life on Earth at this point. I mean, even in Antarctica, they're finding microplastics in the water. And remember, I was talking about the size of that floating thing. So this circle right here, there's a current. The arrow's actually going the wrong way. It goes like this. But the floating debris, plastic debris, is the size of Texas here. So this is what microplastics look like. So they're smaller than a sesame seed. But if you pick up a handful of sand from the beach and look at it under a microscope, a significant part of the interstitial spaces between sand is covered with that stuff. And this has been going on now for 40, 50 years. This is from the Great Lakes here. So this is a staggering statistic. By 2050, if we don't make changes, there's going to be more plastic than fish in the ocean. So one of the things we want to teach the public as league members is to figure out how to stop polluting our oceans and other water bodies. We don't want to see plastics going into the landfills at the rate it's going in. And we don't want to trash our public lands and highways. Nobody wants to look at trash. So I was going to ask you if anybody remembered what the 4 R's were from last month's lecture, but here they are. So refuse, reduce, reuse, and recycle are the 4 R's. And you know, you hear a lot of talk about straws, and I'm thrilled to see so many of you having reusable straws.
We get to do that when we voter registration.
Yeah. And you remember when we were kids, that's all you could get was a paper straw. So I've noticed even some of the restaurants on Park Avenue are serving paper straws. So you can always just refuse a straw, which Jan and I do often when we go out. And styrofoam containers are not recyclable. Please don't ask for them for your doggy bags. And a friend of mine brings a folded up piece of aluminum foil to restaurants with them, just like you take your shopping bags, the reusable shopping bags. So it's you know, it's a behavioral thing to get used to. So you know, you see all kinds of plastic bags for different reasons, and you know, I think I have that exact same bag. But if you're like me, I always forget my bags in the car, so the way you get around that is just have the bagger put them in your grocery cart, take them out to your car, load them at your car. That's what I do.
Oh, that's smart. I like that, reverse engineering.
That's right.
And engineer.
I brought them in today. I went to Publix today. I remember that.
I do. It says you just put the groceries, keep them in the,
So,
you don't put them in bags.
So this is one of the other things we can do is just reduce. So, you know, obviously you can take shopping bags and not use straws and things like that. But a lot of the, well, these are different things that you can do to reduce your plastic use. And we talked about reusable straws. Well, reusable water bottles. So I have one that one of our campaign team gave me, and it has plastic labels on it from the campaign, and we found out their dishwasher's safe too, so that was kind of cool.
That's one of the big problems in developing nations, that a full-size product is too expensive to buy, so they break it down to little plastic bags, and that's what's ending up in the oceans, those tiny little bags, and that's what they can afford to buy.
Yeah.
Historically, they would just put it in a glass jar or something. We streamline that now with plastic bags.
Yeah, so this is something that I do at home. I have one of those Brita filter things, and I put tap water in it because, you know, some people can taste the chloramine or chlorine, whatever they're using to purify the water, and I can't tell the difference between that and bottled water, but I can if a bottle of water's been sitting in the car and it got hot.
Oh, yeah.
It tastes terrible, and that the inside of the bottle is actually breaking down, and that's why they taste so bad. So, you know, use tap water.
Now, that's something that people don't think of. In transportation, they can sit for months and months in a hot warehouse before they're actually shipped to
Yeah.
or so there's plenty of plastic inside that word.
I think I lost a slide here, so excuse me just a minute. So don't take off any grades for this, all right?
I'm marking every little thing.
Okay. Maybe not.
They trimmed it for you.
Okay. So I think my notes ran out of order a little bit there. So how many of you have seen these plastic bag recycle?
Publix,
bins?
yeah.
Does anybody use them?
Yeah.
Okay, great, all right, well, tell your friends, that's important. And the biggest thing about plastic bags is never put them in your recycling bin. That's what happens. So, not only does it jam the machinery, it costs the, in our case, waste management labor time to go in. They have to do this almost daily with razors, and cut all that stuff off. But, you know, these are big horsepower machines, and that stuff really, stops them. So that's something I've actually told both of my neighbors on both sides, because one was pregnant at one time, and I'd take her garbage and recycling out, and I had to tell her, you gotta dump the recycling stuff in the bin and throw the bag in the garbage. But that's very important. And also, what happens is when you put plastic bags and things like computer cords and contaminated things in the recycling bin, the recycling center may look at the end of the truck, and if they see contamination, the whole truckload goes to the dump. None of it gets recycled. So very important to think about what you're recycling and if it is recyclable. So anyway, there's some big numbers here. Waste Management actually makes a profit off of recycling, and because they make a profit selling the raw product to other companies that use it or reuse it, it costs us less, so we don't have our garbage bill raised as long as they're making profit. So we talked about clogging the machines and so forth. So
What are the contaminated things that were mentioned there?
well, for instance, pizza boxes. Okay, I'm not going to talk about plastics right now, but pizza boxes are not recyclable because they're contaminated. The same goes like if you have an orange juice bottle and it's got orange juice, that's considered contamination. Just run it under the tap and, with a little bit of water.
One of the big problems I think is, like, I have a recycling bin like everyone else, so it's a big trash can, but there never was an instruction of what we could put in there. So like the cities, like Winter Park, maybe working on Orlando and on Orange, maybe we can just get the idiot's thing of a magnet thing that we can stick on our refrigerator. This is what goods and bads, and don't look last bag, because none of us know, because Winter Park has different rules than Orlando, depending on the contract.
Yeah, Winter Park, our cans are blue and they actually have a sticker on top. So, there's a column that says,
Yes.
do this, and then these other things, don't put that in there. So pizza boxes, any kind of string or anything like that, plastic bags, none of that goes in. So I'm going to talk to that in a little bit.
Okay, but what about, say, a shampoo container or a dish soap squeeze
Yeah,
container?
as long as it, it has the right number on the bottom, 1 through 6 are recyclable, and number 7.
Well,
They're rinsed out.
I mean,
If
it's
they're
a,
rinsed out, but yeah, just run them under the tap a little bit, and, as long as there's not something floating around, but most of the contamination is food waste. So if it has food on it, don't be afraid to throw it in the garbage. If you don't want to clean it out, throw it in the garbage. But if it can be recycled, most of the time you can just rinse it and it's good to go. So I got ahead of myself there. So all these plastics are made from oil products or fossil fuel products, and they are recyclable. And so the rule is tubs, jugs, and bottles. So when I say bottles, though, I'm talking about plastics, obviously. But like Oleo containers, they want those. The big plastic containers for kitty litter, there's actually a company that's all they want for recycling. So those are very recyclable. And then if you see a number 7, those are bioplastics made out of plant material, and they do decompose over time, but they're not recyclable. They don't have a second user.
So 5s are actually recyclable. I always thought 5 were not recyclable.
Yeah, what happens is they'll sort them all out with these sorting machines, and it's due to the density of whatever it is.
Okay.
And some of the stuff ends up in the landfill, but you gotta leave it
So we
open
should
to
put
the
our cottage
side.
cheese containers in there.
Yeah, as long as they're clean.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop me eating cottage cheese.
Orange County says 1 through 5 only.
Well, This is
When
the
I
league's.
look at it.
Okay, there you go. So the league wrote this, so maybe we might
Depending
want
on
to
your
drop
count,
that.
you have.
Or your city, or your city.
Well, yeah, I know, but I'm Orange County, you know, and I know, because I've looked at that, it says 1 through 5.
Yeah, I'm looking at the website right now, it's 1 through 5.
Okay.
It's 1 through 5.
All right.
What did you say, tubs, jugs, and what?
Tubs, jugs, and
I
I don't know about
bottles,
City of
always
Orlando,
recyclable.
it may be different.
So, you know, the jug can be that big, it can be one of the little hotel shampoo containers, but it's still considered a jug. So things like, you know, the wax coated milk cartons and orange juice, those aren't. The lids are.
Oh, dang it, that's borrowed crap.
Yes, sir.
Number 6 are polystyrenes, which make
Ah,
styrofoam.
there you go.
So maybe some polystyrene is, like campaign signs, I think, are polystyrene, which are technically recyclable, but
I don't think there's
because
a market. for it.
styrofoam, there is a, Gabby and I
We
went through
dealt,
this.
we dealt with this one.
But because expanded polystyrene styrofoam is made for number 6, probably they just say no number 6, because that is styrofoam.
All right. So that'd be egg cartons and